Hello everyone, welcome back to Bit by Bit episode 2. Today we're going to be talking about gathering material. Now this is the step that is seen as the Bermuda Triangle of comedy for most people. Famous comedians seem to be able to pull hilarious anecdotes and jokes out of thin air, leaving the rest of us to believe that they just live more interesting lives. Now while it's true that comedians tend to travel more and interact with more interesting people, leading to them developing material at a more rapid rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyday people don't live interesting lives. Chances are, if you've made it this far, you have a funny story you want to tell, or at least a little observation you made one time. But you might be thinking, that's kind of a once-in-a-month type joke for me to come up with. How am I supposed to come up with dozens of these jokes? Do I just get lucky and hope hilarious things happen to me? The answer's quite simple. Kinda. There was an old saying I had that you write jokes as fast as life happens to you. And to a degree, that's true. However, in recent years, I found that looking for material is less a practice of luck and more a practice of listening. You'd be surprised how many times you make a little joke to yourself in the back of your head and don't even realize it, if it's that much a part of your everyday life. So gathering material is just writing that stuff down. Yes, it's that simple. If it makes you laugh, write it down. It seems stupid to say, but I find when getting into new art forms, sometimes stating the obvious is necessary. I remember when I was first starting out in comedy, one of the best pieces of advice I got was to cut out the not funny bits. That seems like a very condescending thing to say to any aspiring comedian, but at the time I was legitimately like, it's a good point. Because I legitimately wasn't thinking that way. I had no basis to start thinking that way. Just Netflix specials. My enthusiasm from comedy came from watching professionals do it. I didn't know how to deal with the basic blunders of a beginner. So this will be the first kinda obvious rule I say, just for the people that maybe need to hear it. So again, a rule I would have, although I can't call it a rule because I said this whole series was going to end with me saying the first rule, so we'll call this like a sub-rule. Piece of advice? We'll say piece of advice. So this piece of advice I have is, if it makes you laugh, write it down. Even if you don't think it'll make it into a joke, or if it will never be funny outside of the circumstance you originally thought of it, write it down. Because what you're doing here isn't really finding the material for your first Netflix special. What you're really doing is exercising that part of your brain. Make sure the comedy writing lobe, is that what parts of brains are called? Just keep that part active. The personal way I keep this part of my brain active is with my New Year's resolution. At the beginning of 2020, I said I would write a joke or bit per day. I'm a bit loose on the terminology because a lot of these I would hesitate to even call ideas, let alone jokes. I did this just as my continuous effort to pay attention to the funny of the world, and it's paid tremendous dividends. I had two main rules for this resolution. One, I have to write a joke every 24-hour period, from 12:01 to midnight. And two, I cannot stockpile jokes, meaning if I come up with more than one joke a day, I cannot use those jokes for subsequent days. Meaning, some days I come up with 5 jokes, some days I come up with 1, but I always have to come up with at least 1. This has helped me in many ways. For one, it's really just helped my general outlook. I don't want to be one of those people saying, hey, the key to being happier is just acting happier. But in this case, when I was actively trying to find funny things in the world, it not only gave me more material, but helped me have a more positive outlook. I'll say that. I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist or anything. I'm saying it has some positive effects outside of your comedy writing. But another side effect is, of course, that you have a huge catalog of jokes to go through the next time you're building a set. I said I had to come up with at least 1 a day, but typically my average was 2 to 3. By the end of the first month, I had over 60 jokes. Or joke ideas, still, something to work off of, some shreds of potential, let's say. And with these, it's important that you keep the nature of that first thought intact. Pretty much you laugh at something, you're thinking, that's funny looking, oh that's a thing. Write down just enough to keep that spontaneous nature of it. This is kind of getting into the territory of our next episode, where we'll be talking about developing your jokes in your sets. But as a general rule, I'll say this briefly, it's good to keep the spontaneous nature of your jokes intact. Make it seem like, oh, I just thought about it. The best way to do that is to adopt a more minimal way of recording these jokes. I'm not saying every time something funny happens to you, record the time of day, exactly what was happening, who was there, and then the whole script play-by-play of what happened. I'm saying write enough words that you remember it for later. I'll give you some examples from my own personal list. Here's one. I just wrote down the last box. This was recently. I was moving houses. I had to pack up all my things, and I realized, as someone who's moved around a lot, I've noticed that the first boxes you pack are always super organized. You go, all right, all the clothes, this box, kitchenware, this box, boom, boom, boom. But then you get to that last box of just all your miscellaneous crap, and you have no energy to even think of organizing it. You're just going, fuck it, this box has a styrofoam head, one Hot Wheel, some shampoo, and whatever that thing is. That's that box. Fuck it. So yeah, that was a series of thoughts I had, and I wrote that down with the last box. Maybe it's because I have a kind of good memory. I doubt it, because if I didn't write those 3 words, I would have completely forgot I had that funny thought whatsoever. Sometimes laughing can be a very subconscious thing that you will completely forget if you don't note it down. I would never trust your instinct of, oh, I'll remember that for later. But yeah, I don't really know what my conclusion's going to be. Write down everything that makes you laugh. If it's something you say, something your friend said, something you saw, if it warrants any sort of response, record it. Now this will be the part where people much older than me will say, do it with pen and paper. Write it with pen and paper, because then it will transcend the physical realm and transmit as pure brainwaves into your psyche, and you will remember it forever. I don't do that. I just do it on my phone. I use Google Keep Notes. It saves to the cloud. I could throw my phone in a river and I still have all my jokes. Meanwhile, I can totally lose track of this notebook. So yes, that'll be your assignment for this episode. Let's say, go out, create a list of jokes, try to remember any funny stories or anything to get that list started with just a few entries, and I'll see you guys in the next episode where we'll be taking some of those jokes and start to develop them and build your set. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Bit by Bit, and as always, have a good one.